Hello, it's Lexi at Cozy Tea Cafe over on Bookstagram, and today I'm going to be summarizing Spark of the Everflame by Penn Cole, which is book 1 in the Kindred series. Book 4, Burn of the Everflame, comes out September 8th of this year, so I'll try to have all 3 books summarized before that one comes out. Just as a reminder, this will be full of spoilers, full plot points from the beginning to the end of the book, so if you haven't read it and you don't want it spoiled, don't continue watching. We'll start off with our main character, DM, her mother, and a woman named Mora, who are all healers within the nation of Amarian. Millennia ago, 9 immortal siblings, known as the Kindred, came to the mortal world after their own was destroyed, and they forged a magical pact to forego their immortality for their mortal lovers, and this was known as the Forging. Through the forging spell, Amarian was broken up into 9 realms, each with their own unique magic. The offspring of the Kindred and their mortal lovers were known as the Descended, and they were meant to rule the realms and bring peace between the 2 races, but when the Descended came to rule, they shut the mortals out. DM lives in the mortal city within the realm of Lumnos, and all mortals have brown eyes, but hers turned colorless after a childhood illness. While she's on the street, she's stopped and harassed by a group of men who call her a Descended because of her eyes, and then the men try to prove that she's mortal by cutting her, but she takes their weapons and runs. DM gives the weapons to a woman on the street in exchange for sending the men in the wrong direction after her. Then DM sees her mother arguing with a Descended man. A fortune teller approaches and tells DM that her eyes are a gift from her real father, and her mother has tried to hide the truth from her. DM was told her biological father died before she was born, but the woman insists that he's still alive. She calls DM a daughter of the Forgotten and tells her to stop taking the flame root powder, which shocks her because only her closest family knows that she takes it. Later that night, DM's mother, Orally, goes missing. 6 months later, her mother is still missing, and she's stopped taking the flame root weeks ago, and the visions from her childhood have not returned. DM's brother Teller is the only mortal in a Descended school because of an agreement their mother made to work as the Crown's healer in exchange for Teller's place at the school. Now that their mother is gone, DM assures him that Mora will take their mother's place as palace healer so he can still graduate. King Arthur is dying from a mysterious cause, and no one knows who the magic will choose to replace him, but Prince Luther, the king's nephew, is favored because he's the only Lumnos Descended who can wield both light and shadow magic. We learn that in Lumnos, mortals and Descended are forbidden from marrying under the progeny laws, and if any pregnancies occur, they're terminated and the mortal parent is banned from the realm. DM's mother Orally sheltered her from the Descended and forbade her from learning about their healing and going anywhere near the palace. Descended have quick healing abilities, and if they aren't able to heal themselves, they usually go to see the Descended healers in the realm of Fortos. At work, a Descended boy named Elric comes into the clinic and says a stone roof collapsed at the palace and several children are hurt. Descended children don't gain their healing abilities until puberty, so they need a mortal healer, and DM insists on going with Mora to help. Elric brings them to the castle using a secret path through the woods, and DM treats an injured girl, then finds out it's Princess Lillian, the same Lily her brother has a crush on at school. While healing her broken arm, DM sees that the man hovering over her is the same Descended she saw talking to her mother the night she disappeared. When Lily stands up, she passes out, and DM notices she has a large shard protruding from her back. As DM starts to help with the blood loss, Lily's magic slowly starts to take hold, and she wakes up. The wound is now completely gone, and the man thanks DM for healing Lily and asks how she did it, then asks about her eyes. DM says that Lily healed herself, then explains her childhood sickness and threatens to cut his hand off if he doesn't let her go, after she learns that this was Prince Luther. Now we get into some geography info dumping. So DM has visited Miros, the realm of sea and sky, Fortos, the realm of force and valor, and she's been to Arboros, realm of root and thorn, to get medicinal plants with her mom. Phonos, realm of beast and brute, Montios, realm of stone and ice, and Igneos, realm of sand and flame, are all forbidden to mortals. Sophos, realm of thought and spark, is open to mortals by invite only. And lastly, Umbros, realm of mind and secret, is open to all, but the jobs for mortals are sketchy because it's the haven for darkness and sin. DM offers to help Mora in the palace until Teller finishes school, but Mora reveals that her mom's deal was to serve for life, and the price for breaking her promise was execution. DM finally throws all of her flame root powder into the sea, and she and Henry head off on the ring road to perform a delivery for his courier job. Henry is DM's lifelong best friend, and they've recently started dating. When Henry was an infant, his mom became ill with a disease that was only cured by a magical herb. His dad's request to visit Montios to get the herb was denied, and his mom died because of it. So ever since then, he's had this severe hatred of the Descended for basically his whole life. That night, she wakes up in the middle of the night, then walks off and sees a wolf, and her hands start to glow. The wolf leaps at her, and she shuts her eyes and sees a flash of light, but when she opens them, the wolf is gone. She thinks she's hallucinating because she stopped taking her flame root powder, but Henry comforts her and assures her that she wasn't hallucinating because he heard the wolf growl. DM remembers having hallucinations as a child, convincing herself that she had magic and was a Descended, but her mom told her that she inherited these hallucinations from her birth father, and these same delusions led to his death. So she insisted that DM start taking the flame root powder, and she ended up getting better. With Henry's shirt off, she sees a new tattoo on his back of the sacred Everflame tree of life and death that's associated with the old gods, which are forbidden. They arrive in Fortos and meet Orly's friend Leona to get medicinal ingredients from her warehouse. DM asks if she's heard anything about Orly, and Leona increasingly gets more agitated by her questions. DM sees a locked crate of flame root powder hidden under a cloth and asks if she can have any since she ran out. Leona gets flustered and asks her how she got her hands on that. The cage is warded so only the king of Fortos can open it, and it's so highly regulated that even knowing about it can get you executed. DM says she was mistaking it for beetroot powder and leaves in a hurry. Henry and DM end up at the tavern and see Breck, an old friend of Henry's, who's in the army and knows both of DM's parents. When DM asks how he knows Orly, Henry kicks Breck under the table, which is never really explained in this book why he did that. Later, Breck offers DM a blade made of Fortosian steel, the only material that can break Descended skin. The next morning, DM overhears men talking about war, and she briefly has a vision of herself glowing on a battlefield and chalks it up to her delusions again. She sees the same Everflame tattoo on all of these men and storms into the room and tells Henry to come back to the room and tell her everything. Henry says it's better if she doesn't know because she hasn't been stable lately, and she hears this voice inside of her head telling her to hurt him, but she shuts it out and tells him to go back upstairs. They ride back the next day, and Henry apologizes and explains that he saw a mortal boy killed by a Descended crossing the street. The boy couldn't see above the crates he was holding, and the Descended was riding fast on a horse, so it was just an accident, but the Descended didn't even seem to care. Henry went back night after night looking for the man so he could kill him, but another man found him and asked him to join the Guardians of the Everflame, the same organization that led the Blood War Rebellion. Henry says they're planning another rebellion and asks DM to join the cause. He says her work as the palace healer could give them insider info, but she doesn't want to break her oaths as a healer. Henry tells DM he loves her for the first time, and she senses he's about to propose, so she interrupts him. DM takes over her mother's position as palace healer with Mora, and on her way into the palace, she sees a Gryvern standing guard, which is a winged sea dragon that's half eagle, half lion, and they were brought here as the companions of the 9 Kindred. The Gryvern were bound to each realm during the forging, but 2 of them were killed during the Blood War Rebellion. This Gryvern, named Saray, steps down, and DM holds out her hand as the creature ducks to touch her, but the guard yells at Saray to get back to her perch. When they get inside, a fight breaks out between DM and a guard when he tries to take her blade, and Luther scolds the guard. The guard then threatens DM, and Luther unleashes his magic and leaves him bleeding on the floor, then allows DM to keep her blade, but says he'll do worse to her if she tries anything. Mora and Diem check on the children they healed, and Luther tells Diem that her mom was supposed to tell him if and when conditions got bad in Mortal City, so he could help, but Diem just brushes him off and says that conditions are always bad. Luther says Teller and Lily are becoming close and warns her of the repercussions of mortal and descended relationships. They start to argue and end up very close to each other with some romantic tension. The next day, Diem is called to heal a sex worker in Paradise Row, but she refuses payment for her service because she doesn't believe the woman should have to pay for the harm that a man caused. When she leaves, she hears a scream and sees that it's the same woman that helped her in the beginning of the book. The woman is shielding her young son from the boy's father, who is a descended man that is trying to kill the boy before the king finds out about the illegal child. Diem interferes and throws a knife at him, but it doesn't pierce his skin. He uses his power to lock Diem in a shield of shadow, and the woman tells Diem to take her child as the man kills her. Diem tries to reason with the man and says that she'll take the child as her own, but he shoots magic at the boy, and Diem throws her new Fortosian blade at him, stabbing him in the neck without killing him, but this gives her the time that she needs to run and cover the boy. She shouts fire to attract a crowd, and when the man goes to kill her, she chants an ancient sacred prayer, the rite of endings, and the killing blow doesn't hit her or the boy. The man is shocked and tries to strike again, but his magic can't reach her. The townspeople finally arrive and the man flees. When Diem checks on the boy, she sees that he's already dead from his wounds, so Diem buries both of their bodies, and this is the turning point where she realizes that she does want to fight back, so she goes to Henry's and tells him that she wants to join the Guardians. Henry accompanies Diem on her first audition mission to heal the daughter of the most important descended weapons dealer in Lumnos, and Diem is suspicious that the daughter's illness came just a couple of days after she joined the Guardians as a healer, but she's escorted by the dealer's adolescent son, and she learns the little girl developed her sickness after she was given flowers the day before. Diem concludes that they were poisonous deathshade flowers, and the rash is easily treated with cream. The girl says that she got the flowers from a dark-eyed woman who told her not to tell, which confirms to Diem that the Guardians planned this. Diem leaves the room and snoops around the father's office, copying some of his notes, then hides under the desk when she hears footsteps. When he leaves, Diem goes to the kitchens and acts lost, and the staff brings her to the entrance where she's able to get paid and leave. She finds Henry and shows him the documents she copied, and he's amazed she got such valuable information on her first mission. Diem is so proud of his respect that she doesn't push him on the Guardians' involvement in the little girl's illness. Later, they go to meet the Guardians, and the father and a few other men meet them outside and review the documents. Some are hesitant to let her join because her dad was a general in the army, but ultimately they accept her as a member. Inside, Diem sees that one of her trainee healers is a member, and she's ashamed to be seen breaking her oaths in front of other healers who are supposed to look up to her. The father lists off missions that need volunteers, including someone who's needed to walk the ground floor of the palace alone, and Henry urges her to take the mission even though she's not ready. The father gives her orders to search the royal boat for a place stowaways could hide, and when they're at the palace next, Diem makes bitter comments before meeting the sick king for the first time, and Mora tells her that she was always a good healer because of her willingness to treat anyone, but her recent judgments make her question if Diem is fit to be the king's healer. Diem feels guilty that her job is now being affected, so she assures her that she's up for the job. Guards check for weapons, and when one of them gets too handsy, Luther says he'll take over, which makes both of them flustered. She asks Luther how his magic works, and he says light magic is conjured and focused down to its essence and can burn almost anything. Shadows are the absence of everything and can destroy even life itself. Diem enters the king's chambers and quickly says that she left her satchel downstairs, then bolts out before the guards can accompany her. Luther goes after her and Diem hides, and while she's hiding, Luther tells her to come out before she ends up like her mother after she betrayed his trust. Then he leaves and tells the guards to find her alive and unharmed. Diem knows that she's not going to make it to the boats, so she goes back upstairs with her satchel, and the guards put a knife to her throat. Luther commands them to release her, then checks the wound on her neck. He stabs the guard in the stomach to wound him because he disobeyed his orders in harming her. Then he tells Diem that people in this castle must obey him, and he orders her to leave. DM goes to the Guardian's meeting house and sees a member named Vance, who she remembers seeing talking to her mother at the healer's clinic. She tells them about her failed mission, and she's eager to prove herself, so she tells them about a secret passage into the palace through the woods and immediately regrets it because of the children in the palace. Later, Henry asks her to marry him, and she tells him that she has to think about it. Mora takes over all palace healing work and forbids DM from joining, and DM is paranoid that the rebels will attack the palace using the secret passage she gave them. Henry is busy planning for a secret mission, and DM is happy for the space between them. While DM is making a house call in Lumnos City, Princess Lily spots her and thanks her again for healing her, but DM says it was mostly her own powers healing herself. Lily says that her powers never work that quickly, so they're both left confused. But then Lily apologizes for Luther being rude and says that he's actually a good man. He's guarded because everyone is always trying to get close to the crown, but he trusts DM because she doesn't try to impress him. Lily invites DM and Teller to the palace for dinner, and DM is hesitant but says that Lily is always welcome over their house anytime. At dinner, DM teases Teller about Lily, and he's mad at her for bringing Lily up in front of their dad because he doesn't know who she is. So to get back at her, he tells their dad that Henry proposed. Their father tells them the story of how he met their mother in the army. Orly went away on a mission and came back pregnant, and she was going to leave the army to start a new life. She told their dad she was leaving, and he finally got the courage to ask her out, and he knew that he wanted both Orly and her baby in his life. The story is interrupted by the sound of bombs coming from Lumnos City, and DM runs to help. As she runs through the city, Henry and the Guardians find her and tell her to go home, but DM says that she needs to help the wounded and tries to leave, but Henry grabs her arm and the Guardians block her way. She agrees to leave, then turns and runs away. DM sees that the fire is coming from the armory, not the palace, but she still feels guilty because she provided the blueprints from the weapons dealer. The guards won't let her in, so she yells for Luther and apologizes for her behavior at the palace, and Luther lets her in. People are still trapped inside, but the tunnel is too small for the guards to get into, and if they lift the beam, the entire building will collapse. DM offers to go in because she's small enough to fit, and Luther says no at first, but then agrees because he's pressured by his guards. DM goes into the burning building and contemplates just dying in there, but she hears the voice in her head telling her to fight, so she gets up and sees two injured men. One of the men has a heavy log crushing his pelvis, and the other is unconscious. Somehow, DM lifts this log that is 3 times her body weight, and she has the man lay on the unconscious man so she can pull them both out. She reaches the exit and can't make it any further, but Luther sends his light in to help her out, but she insists on getting the men out first. Once the men are out, the guard lifts the beam, and she has another vision of her in armor on a battlefield, but this time Luther is next to her. Back in the present, Luther reaches for DM, but the beam cracks and falls towards her. She wakes up in a bed with Luther asleep in the chair next to her, and he wakes up and tells her that the 2 men survived. Luther sent word to her father that she stayed at the palace overnight so he wouldn't worry. Then DM hears Saray, the Gryvern, shrieking because she's bound to the crown and can sense the king will die soon. Luther says the king has been acting weird and asks DM to take a quick look before she leaves. In the king's room, DM feels drawn to Saray, but Luther warns her that if Saray were to attack, only the king can call her off. DM says there's nothing else that they can do for the king and asks Luther about him. The king was like a father to him, which drove a wedge between him and his real father. Luther asks if she was looking for something for the Guardians the last time she was here, and says he knows it was their attack last night. DM deflects and asks what happened to her mother, but Luther assures her that he didn't make her disappear. Then Luther is called away, and he leaves DM alone with the king. DM holds the king's hand and speaks the rite of endings, but when she finishes, the king opens his eyes and says, "You've finally come," and says her blood will shatter their stone and lay waste to their borders. Then he starts to glow, and the crown of Lumnos, a halo of light and shadows, hovers above his head, and he speaks in a female voice that says, "Daughter of the Forgotten, when the end has come, give our gift to my faithful heir," and DM falls backwards, trying to get away. Her knife falls out, and she grabs it as Luther and the guards come in. This obviously looks suspicious, so Luther checks the king for wounds, and DM is hurt that he thinks she would harm a dying man, so she leaves. Luther follows after her and she puts a knife to his throat, but he tells her to do it, saying he's already on borrowed time and it would be a beautiful end at her hand. Then he kisses her. He tells her to stop lying to herself and admit she feels his magic like he feels hers, and he says that she's not immortal after all. He tells her that she doesn't have to fulfill her mother's bargain, and Teller can still finish school, but he asks her to come back as the palace healer because he wants her there. But DM says that she's quitting her job as a healer because she feels like she's broken her oaths. He calls after her and says he knows that she saw the vision too, and says that their story isn't finished. DM goes to Henry's and he says he spent all night convincing the Guardians she wasn't a threat to them. DM says she should have never joined and doesn't want innocent people harmed, and she realizes that Henry knew the weapons dealer's daughter was poisoned, but he says war isn't won without bloodshed. DM says they should leave Lumnos together, but Henry says he has a life here, then tells DM her father is being called back to the army to deal with rebels, and he isn't as honorable as she thinks he is. DM goes back home and her father is waiting for her, angry that she didn't come home. He reveals that King Ulthar used to call on him personally to keep the peace between mortals and Descended, but he was never invited inside the palace and questions why she was. They argue because he found out she's been working as the palace healer from Luther's letter, and then her dad recognizes Lily's name and calls Teller into the room. DM says she was just teasing Teller about Lily and there's nothing actually going on, then asks when he was going to tell them about joining the army again. He says he didn't have a choice and wanted to tell them the night before, but he tells DM to either get her job back and work extra shifts or marry Henry to provide for their family. DM hears the voice in her head telling her to fight, and she blames him for her mother's disappearance, then he kicks her out. Teller runs after her, and she hears the voice in her head calling her daughter of the forgotten. DM touches the ground and it sizzles as she screams. A light shoots from her hands and a crown appears above her head, selecting her as the new queen of Lumnos. In the epilogue, Orly is somewhere in Amarian, waiting in solitude for the king to die, but she didn't expect him to survive over 6 months. She calls out to the darkness and says that she's come back for him, but when there's no answer, she reminds herself that she's safe because she killed him. She then goes into another area with a 10-pointed star on the floor with 9 archways containing glowing symbols of a crescent moon within a fiery sun. The ground rumbles, and when she touches the rock, her hand burns, and the symbols go dark. Then a beam of light shoots from the sky and illuminates the rock next to her, meaning the king has died and she'll be going home in 30 days. So that is the end of book 1. I feel like there are a lot of loose ends in that book, so hopefully they're tied up in book 2. As soon as I read it, I will summarize it and post it, and same with the 3rd book. I'm going to try to get them all done by September 8th when book 4 comes out. As always, if there are any other books you'd like me to summarize, please just leave a comment and I will do my best to get to them. Thanks for watching.